This is the mentality we are dealing with here in Oklahoma. Two out-of-touch multimillionaires coming to our state, putting our lives at risk for a photo op.
Oklahomans are sick and tired of what's going on in Washington. And if you look at who's responsible, if you look at what the swamp really is, it's my opponent. It's Jim Inhofe.
We need a senator who's going to represent everyday Oklahomans, who understands the realities of healthcare and the dire need to improve public education.
Where'd that come from? But go ahead.
It's part of the Democrat platform, and if you're in the United States Senate, you might have to vote on that.
It's your question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you support that?
Yeah.
You know, I don't, but I think that, to try to put me in a box where I have to agree with the Democratic platform, Todd, you don't know me very well.
I'm the biggest threat to his seat he has ever had. He has an attack ad called Dear Abby running right now. He is trying to paint me as everything I'm not.
Where was he during the biggest threat to our country this year in this pandemic? That's right, he was quiet back in January when he was selling off his stocks. He treated this like it was all a hoax, not a big deal.
Most Oklahomans are one health emergency away from financial difficulty and two health emergencies away from financial ruin.
And, quite frankly, it's on the media's part to make sure that they're reporting, responsible results from the election.
This is a political power play that is meant to take away your health care. The president put forth this nominee who has gone on record saying she thinks the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional and she would overturn it. This means that those folks of pre-existing conditions I talked about just a couple of minutes ago would be at risk of losing their health care. I think about the 200,000 Oklahomans who were looking forward to having access to affordable health care because of Medicaid expansion, and the people of Oklahoma voted on that in June.
I'm joined now by Abby Broyles. She is a Democrat who is running for the U.S. Senate in Oklahoma. And Abby, thank you for joining us. You've been very outspoken about this rally. Tell us why.
Hi, Brianna. It's great to be with you this afternoon. People here in Oklahoma are terrified for their lives, for their health. We have worked so hard in Oklahoma, staying home for months, keeping our businesses closed to keep Oklahomans safe. The rally this weekend is going to undo so much of that hard work. The people of Oklahoma didn't invite the president to come here. He's coming here because he has the support of a governor and our senior senator, my opponent, Jim Inhofe, who have mocked this pandemic from the very beginning. You'll remember a few months ago, Jim Inhofe was asked a legitimate question by a reporter in D.C. Jim Inhofe is 85 years old, and this reporter asked him if he was taking any precautions against the coronavirus. Inhofe said no, and then stuck his hand out and asked the reporter if he wanted to shake hands. This is the mentality we are dealing with here in Oklahoma. Two out-of-touch multimillionaires coming to our state, putting our lives at risk for a photo op in a desperate attempt to hold on to power and get reelected in November.
And so Jim Inhofe will actually be there for a photo op. You challenged him to shake hands with the crowd, right? You challenged him to do that?
He thinks it's safe enough to go hold a rally with 20,000 people. I'd like to know if he signed the waiver to get in the door. And he was trying to shake hands a few months ago. Sure, I think that he should prove just how safe it is to do this by trying to shake hands this weekend.
Do you think that given the racial tensions that we're seeing in America right now, and of course Tulsa's history of some of the worst racial violence, right? Do you think that we're going to see unrest this weekend?
I hope we don't see unrest this weekend, but I think the president and Jim Inhofe are coming here to create chaos because that is what they do. I believe in the people of Oklahoma. This is where I grew up. It's where I've spent 10 years as a journalist. And I know that we stand up and do what's right. I'm hoping it'll be peaceful this weekend, but it doesn't help when you have a president and our senior senator coming here on this particular weekend and at a time when coronavirus cases are spiking right here in Tulsa County.
The president admitted, Abby, that some people will get sick from the rally. He stressed that it will be a small percentage. I wonder what your reaction is to that.
I think anyone getting sick is irresponsible and reckless. This arena packs in 19,000 people, but we aren't talking just about 19,000 people. I know the president and Jim Inhofe don't believe in science and math, but I do. And this isn't 19,000. This is hundreds of thousands of people at risk because all of those people are going to go into our stores and our restaurants and our churches and infect so many more people. It's reckless to say otherwise.
Abby Broyles, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Brianna. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for being with us. It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Kevin, and Mike and Todd. It's good to see you as well. And, you know, this isn't my first time on Flashpoint, but this is a much different capacity joining you. So it's good to be back.
The headlines right now in the last 48 hours is you raise more money, candidate organization issues money, more money than Jim Inhofe. For gosh sakes, talk about that. That is incredible. That's historic.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. We were excited to see that news yesterday. The FEC reports came out, and we did outraise Senator Inhofe in the most critical fundraising quarter of the campaign. So you can really see from our fundraising that the momentum is with our campaign.
That money that you've raised in this last quarter, that come from Oklahoma or outside of Oklahoma?
About 80% came from Oklahoma, and the average contribution is $17. We have people across our state, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, who are chipping in because they want change. And, you know, we've said all along, your $10 does matter. And when you look at our numbers that we just put up, that's because of people chipping in what they can during these tough times because they want real leadership and they want change.
Will there be a debate, as far as you know?
So far, Senator Inhofe will not debate me, but every day that he won't debate me, he loses support. People want to see the opponents on a stage, socially distanced, talking about the issues that matter most to Oklahomans. Earlier this week, he went on the Oklahoman. They did a live stream with them, and we did as well. And he got up there and took the opportunity, you know, to bash me and call me a liar and paint me as everything that I'm not. Why not get up on a debate stage so Oklahomans can see us side by side and decide who's up for the job for a United States Senate seat for 6 years, whether it's Jim Inhofe or me?
All right, Abby, let's talk about some issues. Right now,
Sure.
the most important thing outside of the presidential election, well, you might disagree what's most important on the election cycle, but we have Amy Coney Barrett. Do you favor packing and adding members to the United States Supreme Court?
I absolutely do not support packing the court, and it's just not going to happen. I'm also a lawyer, and the rule of law is what we have to stand on in this country. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think that cramming through this Supreme Court nomination while so many Oklahomans are suffering is wrong. Right now, it's a political power play to strip you of your health care. The ACA is not perfect, but there are so many Oklahomans who depend on it to have access to quality, affordable health care. 1 in 3 Oklahomans has a pre-existing condition. If you've had COVID-19, if you have high blood pressure, you have a pre-existing condition. And if the ACA is dismantled, you're at risk of losing your access to health insurance.
And Abby, keep going. I mean, people don't realize that right now the Trump administration and the Republican Party largely, some disagree, I think, are trying to, in fact, abolish the Affordable Care Act, even though 70% of the American people want it now in front of the United States Supreme Court. So continue your advocacy on health care. And what would you do in addition to the Affordable Care Act?
Sure. I mean, this is the #1 issue I hear from Oklahomans, and I have traveled our state. Even during a pandemic, I put a mask on and gone and talked to people in parks, and they tell me they simply cannot afford health insurance. The people of Oklahoma spoke at the polls on June 30th when we passed Medicaid expansion, which is a staple of the ACA. I've listened to so many of those 200,000 Oklahomans who were depending on their access to health care finally because we expanded Medicaid. If we dismantle the ACA, that goes away. So many Oklahomans right now are in limbo and they're worried. And most Oklahomans are 1 health emergency away from financial difficulty and 2 health emergencies away from financial ruin. We talk about pre-existing conditions. Let me tell you about a family I met at my church just a few months ago. They have 2 daughters under the age of 10. Their names are Sadie and Ella, and they are adorable, and you would never know just by looking at them, but they both have pre-existing conditions, illnesses that they will live with for the rest of their life. Now, they didn't choose that, but they are going to be at risk of losing their access to health care for the rest of their life because of political stunts like what is happening right now in the U.S. Senate, trying to cram through a nominee because the end goal after 10 years of trying to dismantle the ACA is they're trying to push this through because that's what they want to do. They don't care about your health care. My opponent has the finest health care plan on earth. He's been on the government dime for over 53 years. But he wants to take away your health care.
Abby,
what does that say about the lack of leadership?
Abby, let's shift gears to another issue that's very important, and it's part of the Democrat platform. Where do you stand on statehood for Washington, D.C. and statehood for Puerto Rico? Do you support that?
Golly. Where'd that come from? But go
It's
ahead.
part of the Democrat platform, and if you're in the United States Senate, you might have to vote on that.
It's your question. I'm sorry. Go
Do
ahead.
you support that?
Yeah.
You know what? I don't, but I think that, to try to put me in a box where I have to agree with the Democratic platform, Todd, you don't know me very well. I am not going to just stand in line with my party for every single vote. If there's something I disagree with, if there's something that is bad for Oklahoma, then I'll stand up to my caucus. We need leaders who are going to work across the aisle and get things done, not play these partisan political games that everybody I talk to in Oklahoma are sick and tired of when they look at what's happening in Washington, D.C.
Let's talk about some of these campaign ads, specifically against you, and they paint you with Pelosi and with Elizabeth Warren. Anyway, take it and run with it, as Mike says.
Sure. I think that Senator Inhofe is trying to paint me as everything that I am not in his attack ads. He says that, I am for all kinds of things that I have never even talked about. But that's all they have. That's the Republican playbook. They're trying to throw anything at the wall and see if it sticks. And, dividing us is just not working. His ad where it says anyone who is progressive or really just disagrees with him, that they're not an Oklahoman. I can't tell you how many phone calls and emails we've gotten about that ad, people being so angry about that. We need leaders who are going to bring us back together. Look at what's happening in our country right now. His ads are divisive, but I'll address our ads as well. It's not so much about Senator Inhofe's age, it's about his ability to do the job. He ranks 83rd out of 100 for the worst attendance record in the Senate. When is the last time Senator Inhofe has come to Oklahoma and held a town hall and listened to Oklahomans? He's out of touch with the issues that we face here. He's out of touch with the realities when it comes to healthcare, public education. Again, right now, they're just cramming through a Supreme Court nominee when so many Oklahomans have lost their job and their health insurance during this crisis. When parents are trying to get their kids to school on a laptop, if they have one, maybe it's just a cell phone, because of these extraordinary times. And so it's very, on our part, it is not so much about calling him too old for the job. It's about his ability to show up each and every day for Oklahomans and work hard and work across the aisle and get things done. And I can tell you from my conversations with people, Oklahomans are sick and tired of career politicians. This guy is the definition of a career politician. He's been in office since LBJ was president. He is out of touch with what it is like to be an Oklahoman in 2020 today.
You're talking about Joe Biden or Jim Inhofe? It was hard to tell. Talking about how long they've been in office. So I guess you're voting for Trump.
Well, Todd,
that's
I'm running for the
side
Senate,
issue.
so I'm talking about
It's Mike's turn to ask
Jim
a question.
Abby, I've heard you speak in passionate terms defending the United States Postal Service and trying to figure out why Trump and Inhofe and the Republicans are attacking the United States Postal Service. Please talk about your defense of that wonderful institution.
I mean, the Postal Service is enshrined in our history, and they've been on the front lines during this pandemic. That's why I have the support of them here in Oklahoma. But it's all, again, fear-mongering. It's trying to scare people into thinking their vote is not going to count, that if you vote by mail, it's not a real vote, or there's some sort of voter fraud. I've said this before. Show me where there's voter fraud. Mail-in ballots are just fine, and they're the safest way to vote right now. And my opponent has used the mail to vote, by the way, 76% of the time in the past decade. So if my opponent, if it's safe enough for him to vote by mail, it's safe enough for all of you, and your vote does count. We can't let people scare us into not making our voices heard in the most important election of our lifetime.
Can you articulate how you would be more of an advocate for our military, particularly our military installations in Oklahoma, more than Jim Inhofe has?
Todd, I think it's a great question. And, anyone sitting in this spot is going to advocate for our men and women in uniform. Our military bases are vital to Oklahoma. In fact, I'll be at one tomorrow. I'll be down in Lawton this weekend and visiting with folks, and I'll be at Fort Sill. But, look, anyone who's in this position is going to stand up for our men and women in uniform. And I actually got in this race after we had covered a story at Channel 4 for a couple of years where I saw firsthand the disconnect between Senator Inhofe and military families. So many families at Tinker Air Force Base were dealing with mold and asbestos on base housing. The conditions were terrible. So many families had to move across the street into RVs because they could no longer live in their homes. And I watched a press conference where Senator Inhofe got up to that microphone and he told these families how nice their housing was. And if it was this nice when he was in the Army, he would have stayed longer. It was not long after that that I got in this race. Look, in me, you will not only have an advocate for our members of the military and their families, you also don't have to worry about me cozying up to defense contractors to fund my reelection campaign. That's what we have right now.